right, guys, we're moving on. So, did you know that Henry Cavill isn't just out as Superman? He's not just out as Geralt. He's also out and in the open as a toxic man baby gamer who's basically QAnon now.
Welcome to
okay,
the
I made
club.
up a little bit of that last part, but that is what he's being labeled at by these people from this podcast.
It's like they want our jobs to be easier for us, so they just curate the news exactly to what we cover.
See, I think it's like they
like
literally
let's just create more stupidity for Brett and Mary to talk about on purpose.
They've got like the whiteboards, right? And they throw plungers at it, and they're like, "What are we going to talk about today?" Henry Cavill.
Just
what about
close
today?
their eyes,
QAnon.
throw it, and they hit the target.
Yeah.
Do you guys see that skip up with Vice?
Yes, yeah, the one about trans. What is it? Trans something. Yeah, I know what you're talking about, but
Wait,
it's
what?
but they don't throw plungers. They throw dildos at at whiteboards. It lands on. You'd have to see it.
Yeah, I think I remember that. Is this Stone Toss or? I think it's like
It was
a
pretty
Stone
funny.
Toss comic.
It was like
Anyway.
it was like Ukrainian trans something or other. Yeah. All right. So Henry Cavill has gotten in trouble. I'll tell you the other thing that he's in trouble for, and this is why you can't win in society anymore, because they're mad at him because he didn't want to take his shirt off more and he didn't want to do sex scenes.
Yeah.
What is it? Do you get mad because they do too many sex scenes and it's sexist and misogynist, or do you get mad because you don't want to do enough sex scenes, or just admit that you as women have double standards? Not you, Mary, but you as women in the majority have double standards and admit that you don't get to. We get called the male gaze and everything you like is bad, but then they get to make Jason Momoa thirst trap articles. And
Well,
Henry
Brett,
Cavill's
listen.
bad.
Brett, you are spinning a misogynist
Yes, I am.
narrative, and I will not stand for it.
Well, there's nobody more misogynist in
Here's
this
the
world than me.
truth, straight from, I think it's called Duke's Moi. I don't really know how to say it, but it's this podcast and this gossip site where they take anonymous tips, which are super reliable, of course. And they released on this podcast inside information about the way Henry Cavill behaved on the set of The Witcher.
Here's those damn inside sources again. People should be forced to walk around with just plain black shirts with white text that says inside source.
Here's what the inside source said. In season 2 and 3, something shifted and he became really impossible for women to work with, which is always a big problem, even though Henry Cavill has been called extremely collaborative and kind by other professionals.
By not listening to what they say and doing exactly what they order you to do, you're being difficult.
So they said this is even worse because the showrunner is a woman. He would try to overrule her and get changes made last minute across the board without her knowledge.
No more mixed sex work environments.
They said female writers and directors were being completely ignored on set, unable to do their jobs. Every department head was complaining. He started making comments. It wasn't a sexual thing. He wasn't grabbing anyone or being lewd, but it was disrespectful and toxic all the same.
It's the gaming. It's the gaming.
So they blame this on Henry Cavill being a radicalized gamer, a toxic male Gamergate defender.
Okay, I got a question.
Gamergate defender? What does that mean? What side is that?
If Henry Cavill had a 4chan account, what would it be called? What would Henry Cavill's 4chan handle be?
Sarkeesian
They continued.
gets owned 42069.
He's deeply addicted to video games to the point where it's like working with any other addict. He was distracted, late, obsessive. A lot of people would think that the misogyny came from the gamer world.
No, only weirdos like you would think that, lady.
Video
no
game
normal person
bro
thinks
language is not how you talk to coworkers, and he wouldn't stop. Someone on the show compared it to watching someone get brainwashed by QAnon. Like his whole personality shifted. Eventually, his disrespect escalated. So they said that he allied with some writer who was also on his side and then got fired for HR violations.
They think that that's the DeMaio who's working on X-Men 97.
Bo DeMaio or whatever.
Who was talking about how they clearly had a strong distaste for the source material and they made fun of it.
So he had an alliance maybe with this writer because only the two of them, alone on set, wanted to stay true to the source material of The Witcher.
How dare he?
And it's known that he might have been pushing back on aspects of the show coming directly from the writers and the showrunner that were trying to deviate from it.
I also saw somebody who said They said that it was suspicious, like what his reaction, like how he wouldn't spend time outside of work with Millie Bobby Brown and how he wouldn't give her. They're like, that's pretty suspicious. I'm like, so what you're saying is there's no winning.
Even Millie Bobby Brown said that it was an honorable thing that he decided not to mix his personal life with work when he was working with her because she's only 18. But obviously, like, what is his age? Like, he's 40.
He's 39.
Of course, he's not going to be like BFFs with a teenage girl on set.
That's how all of this stuff starts. That's how all of this stuff starts.
I mean, even if he were a creep.
If you're Drake, it starts even earlier.
Even if he were a creep, he at least like would know not to keep it in his professional life. Like, obviously. So I'm guessing that this turned a critic named, I think the name is Claudia Amenabar, called Claudia Says on Twitter, against Henry Cavill. But it turns out this girl, who is a critic and a podcaster, she used to be a big fan of Henry Cavill when it was socially acceptable to be a fan of Henry Cavill.
So she found out that he dated Gina Carano, I'm sure.
Anna, that Star Wars girl, found screenshots of her old tweets where she was simping for Henry Cavill.
And who wouldn't?
She said, my sexuality is scruffy Henry Cavill being gentle with his pet bat. She was like quote tweeting this picture of Henry Cavill petting a bat.
Why do people talk like that on Twitter?
Yeah.
No human being talks like that, you freaking weirdo.
So contrast that with her recent tweets. So Claudia said, too long didn't read. Henry Cavill got gamer red-pilled and became impossible to work with. Female showrunner for The Witcher and many female employees were treated like garbage, and it made producing the show impossible. And she also said,
to work with like a picture of Anita Sarkeesian with a big X through it.
It's just like that on the nose. So she continued, when people are like, oh, he quit because the writers don't respect the lore, shut the F up. They love that series, and he was allegedly working against them.
No.
That's not what the facts say.
They're lying. You're just lying.
Considering he dates weirdly young women and had weird comments about Me Too, this does not come in as a shock. I just remembered that Henry Cavill dated Gina Carano at one point. This all tracks. Praying for any women who have to work with him on Warhammer. Now, funny enough, he's working with his own girlfriend on Warhammer. Yep. So, yeah, prayers up to her, I guess. And then when that Star Wars girl responded and showed these screenshots of her simping for Henry Cavill, she screenshotted her account, Claudia did, and said, your only brand is targeted harassment. She privated her account and then deleted all of her own tweets. Like, it's anything to just avoid accountability with these people, but this is such a secondhand embarrassment situation, obviously.
Also, like, what does any of that have to do with, like, journalist ethics in gaming?
Dude, this is a nothing burger. I mean, full combo meal.
It's the definition of a substanceless smear campaign.
And it's also funny because they won't let it die.
It's like he's perfectly pleasant.
2014... Like,
I think all of these people just like got the update from their NPC programmers that it's not socially acceptable to be a fan of Henry Cavill anymore. So she had to like update her opinion, her software on Henry Cavill.
But is this also like just like they need the boogeyman? Like, nobody cares about Gamer. Like, we weren't even around like when Gamergate was going on. Plenty of people that are talking about this. Like, well, it's like it wasn't relevant to me at the time. It wasn't relevant to me at the time.
I think it's gonna remain relevant for a very long time.
Only because they're forcing
it.
They're forcing it to be relevant still. There have been 90,000. No, but I'm saying like learning about it since then in like 2016, 2017 because it became relevant around election time. Again, I mean, because all of this stuff came into meme culture. The
consequences are still rippling out from Gamergate to this day, which we're gonna get into later.
Yeah.
Like, it did kick off a huge part of the culture war, which is why people still talk about it. But I feel like these people are just like pathologically obsessed with that narrative that, you know, gamers are misogynist pigs and they're basically the same as meathead jocks, but without the muscles.
It's the same. It's like, the same moral. It's the same type of weird moral panic as video games causing violence, right? It's all in the same realm. It's still a moral panic.
Are gamers the misogynist, frat guys that they frame them to be, or are they basement dwelling incels? I ask.
It's also
over and over. I don't think they have an answer.
It's also stupid because gaming is about as mainstream as anything in the world right now.
Yeah,
there are very few things more mainstream than gaming.
Yeah, I mean, I think that some of the biggest video games outgross the biggest films at this point.
Yes, they do. The video game industry is enormous.
Right, but it's still talked about as if it's this underground thing, like delusional. Someone responded to this and said, "Am I crazy for thinking this wouldn't be a big deal even if it was true? He tried to make the show more like the books it's based on and expressed discomfort over being objectified. Is not misogyny."
Notice how it's a problem when a guy wants to not be objectified. Poor Chris Hemsworth just has to take it when they tell him to get naked and be humiliated for Thor. But when a girl, but it's like also like that. Maybe that's my biggest problem is that they still the Mary Sue and all these websites blatantly and boldly write articles that are clearly thirst traps for hot male celebrities. But the second you even think of doing that with a female celebrity, it's not allowed.
That's why it was so annoying about Frost, because every time there was a hot chick, she was the first to be like salivating at the mouth and be like, "Oh my god, what I do to her."
There's nothing that leftist women hate more, I mean, especially in like the gaming and streaming space, than right-wing men not being attracted to them. Like, they hate that. It makes them so angry, and they'll never admit it to themselves.
There's a lot to unpack.
And for most of that,
right.
It's, to them, in these cases, what I would argue is that they don't have a problem with hot women. They have a problem with hot women that are either brought forward by men or created with men in mind or used with men in mind, right? Meaning, like, if it's a hot lesbian character that's in what was the name of the gay vampire show, like whatever that was, if it's that and they're hot in that, that's fine, because it's not for you incel. Take that. It's for them. They only have a problem with it. The reason they don't like it in comic book characters is because they're written by men, they're drawn by men, therefore it's a creation by a man, which means the male gaze, which means more and more leftist psychobabble, blah 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 blah. They don't care about them being hot. They care about them being anything that men might like.
Any normal observer of this situation, I think, can tell that Henry Cavill is a very professional person. He's very easy to work with. Thank you guys.
It is the holiday season.
He's easy to work with. He loves the source material on the projects that he joins. If he's not a fan already, he at least goes to the effort and the work of looking into the source material and understanding it so that he can portray it properly.
I think if him and Tom Cruise did something together, I might just quit and
you might
see
spontaneously
if I can combust and go and try to get a job. Like, hey, Tom. Hey, Tom. Hey, Henry. Can I be in your movie? I mean, I guess they did do Mission Impossible together.
They could definitely start a cult, and I think that you would join Brett.
It's very possible.
All of the evidence points to Henry Cavill being a very professional and collaborative person. I saw this quote from the cinematographer of The Witcher, not Beau DeMaio, a different person, who said...
Beau DeMaio doesn't sound like a real
Henry
name.
is one of the people who knows the books the best, as well as all the scripts the best. It's amazing how much he knows. All the lines of all the characters. It's amazing. He is really collaborative. He would sometimes discuss an idea or suggest an idea, but would never push for it. If he came to talk about a shot and asked for a reason why the camera was in a particular place, it was really rare. It would always be for the purpose of the story. He was extremely generous and extremely professional. So I think that all of the evidence is pointing to exactly the opposite of what this anonymous inside source is saying. And I would love to know where on set they were. If they were just a production assistant who was like, I don't know, doing COVID tests on everyone.
This is what annoys me. I'm just putting myself in this position, right? So I'm leading a project, and I have my star employee, and my star employee is telling me, like, boss, I just want to work even better, and I'm upset with that. Like, that's these people.
How dare you?
They just have to listen to themselves,
because he reminds them of the fan base that they
Hate.
are using to get exposure on their project.
Also, I just want to point out that according to women, being toxic towards other women just means not taking your shirt off, not having sex with them, and asking questions and not doing everything they ask you to do. That sounds like toxic femininity to me.
Yeah.
Femininity to me.
So from what you watched of The Witcher, did you think that it was over-sexualizing him?
There's a lot in the first. Yeah, but like, look,
He probably was keeping it from going to the extreme end of that. Then,
it's like
if he was pushing back on it at all.
They probably wanted
what would these women have said if any of the men in Game of Thrones had been like, I don't want to have sex in this show. You can't do that. It's in your contract. I get it, but it doesn't mean that he's a bad person or toxic because he doesn't want to do that.
That's why we keep saying, like, where are the male intimacy coordinators, though?
Like,
I would love to know if you have a male intimacy coordinator,
Henry Cavill,
who coordinates intimacy for male actors.
Yeah, maybe.
Where is that?
Maybe the guy doesn't want a female intimacy coordinator. Did you ever think of that? Like,
yeah.
What if you were, okay, how about this? What if it's a scene between two gay men?
Right.
Would you want a female intimacy coordinator?
No.
No, you would not.
I mean, I don't like intimacy coordinators in general because I think that they're smarmy, weaselly HR
They're just
reps.
human
but,
resource people. But
aside from that point, it's hypocritical, obviously. And I think this is another example, like Henry Cavill getting objectified or sexualized in The Witcher or any of the projects he's on. It's another example of women just like acting like dudes, and it's like
they're
pretending to be visually focused as men are, but they're not.
Yeah.
So it's kind of like another weird battle of the sexes thing, and it's like you're not winning.
That's what I
mean by
mean.
acting like an F-boy.
And that's what I mean when I say like that they don't have when they talk about like thirst traps with men, right? That's a thing.
Like,
but the reason men draw women a certain way is because men are more inherently visual creatures.
Yeah, I mean, hate to bring it back to this while Dane is on the show, but like the TikTok thirst traps, right?
Yeah.
It's not just dudes being shirtless and just existing while shirtless. They have to like role play all these crazy scenarios, like getting arrested or like beating people up, because it's obviously like a psychological thing.
Yeah.
Where they have to like recreate these scenarios of like being in proximity to danger and being like protectors and stuff like that. Like it's not just Henry Cavill in a hot tub. Like that's not what appeals to women. That appeals to gay men.
And it's anti-reality. Like we're gonna talk about this more when we get into like Jennifer Lawrence later this week. But I'm saying like they want to pretend like they can somehow do these jobs better, but the structure of production is such that you cannot have a conflict-free work environment. It's not possible. Like you cannot do that. And it seems like what they want is not for it to be conflict-free. They want for him to bend the knee to them whenever they say. Otherwise, and then let's face it, we as a society have given that a lot of capital now. The term misogynist goes a long way. So why wouldn't they, as cutthroat business women, use that to their advantage? Sure, it's sneaky, underhanded, and evil, but I get it. Like you're just a scumbag, but you're a scumbag in a business, but you're doing it by playing on the virtue and goodwill of other people, which is awful.
To the anonymous inside source that has just, allegedly exposed Henry Cavill for this misogyny or whatever you're accusing him of, I would like you to expose your identity and show the receipts for what you're saying instead of just throwing your bullshit out there without any facts. And secondly, to the blue check on Twitter who is now on private mode, unprivate your account, defend what you said, explain yourself, or stop acting like you're a public figure.
But they've walked back to every single claim already. So it's like it's literally.
But the point is they put it out.
I mean, I just like hope that this girl works out whatever her issues with Henry Cavill are, and Henry Cavill not wanting to date her. I really hope that you find healing from that, sis. Because this is not a good look.
Also, I do want to push back a little bit on what you said about Henry Cavill, or was that off air when you were talking about like he's not married at 40, but like George Clooney's been married now for quite a few years, but he didn't.
George
get married.
Clooney's wife is a huge red flag in my opinion anyway.
But they didn't get married till
yeah.
they didn't get
the
married.
green line's questionable.
They didn't get married till he was in his 50s or getting close to 50. And it's one of those things like if I had Henry Cavill's money and you're working in an industry that seems to be becoming more and more anti-male as the world, as things go on, you become a bigger and bigger target.
And that's essentially what his comments that were so questionable about Me Too meant. He meant like, I'm in a very precarious situation as a man in Hollywood right now because if I am behind closed doors with any opportunistic female,
why would you do that?
They would claim something happened that didn't, and my guilt would be assumed.
And then you get the articles written a year later. It says, why aren't men mentoring more women?
Like he doesn't want to be the next Aziz Ansari. He doesn't want that for his career, and good for him for looking out for himself because obviously there are nefarious people out there looking to lie for attention.
What we need is a Tom Cruise, Henry Cavill buddy cop movie right now. Like right now.
I've said this ad nauseum, but every day the Mike Pence never be in a room alone.
Mike Pence was criticized to hell for that too.
I know, but every day
crazy.
That piece of advice rings more true.
Well, there's just too much. There's too much to be gained with too many ways to get away with it. To not expect that power to be abused. Mm-hmm. Like nothing happens if you get literally somebody proves you wrong. He wasn't there doing something to you. He was in a Walmart four cities over on a security camera at the time you said that happened. Nothing happens. They don't get in trouble.
Yeah. They can take swings. They can take all the swings they want.
And poor Henry Cavill has to face the consequences. And frankly, that's wrong. Thanks for watching this clip, guys. If you want to see full episodes or follow us on social media, links are in the description below. Bye.